Hey everyone, did you know that over 90% of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button? If you enjoy our content, take a second to subscribe. It's free and it really helps us keep bringing you great stories every day. The late afternoon sun filtered through gray clouds as the car rolled to a stop in front of the old Victorian house on Maplewood Lane. It was a quiet neighborhood, with picket fences and flower beds that had once brought her comfort. But today, Eleanor's fingers trembled on the steering wheel. Her children sat in the back seat, eyes wide, silent, sensing the tension in the air. Her partner Thomas sat beside her, holding a manila envelope with careful determination. The legal document inside, emergency custody papers signed by a judge just 2 days ago, felt heavier than any truth Eleanor had ever had to carry. She hadn't seen the house in nearly a year. The last time she walked through that wooden door, she was a different version of herself. Hollow, lost, playing a role that had been crafted for her over years of subtle silences, shifting blame, and twisted affection. Now she had returned not just for her children, but to reclaim her voice. Thomas gave her a steady look, a silent question. "Are you ready?" Eleanor nodded and stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath her shoes as she walked up the pathway. The garden was overgrown. The wind carried the scent of wet leaves and something else, something metallic and cold that settled in the back of her throat. She raised her hand and knocked. It took a moment before the door opened. Nathan stood there. Tall, clean-cut, handsome in that disarming, boyish way that once made people call him charming. He looked surprised to see her. "Ellie?" he asked, blinking. His tone was too casual, too practiced. His eyes flicked from her to Thomas and then to the kids behind her. "We need to talk," she said, holding his gaze. Her voice was calm, even, practiced. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You could have called." She handed him the document without a word. Nathan's eyes scanned the page. His jaw twitched. "You're not serious," he muttered, stepping back. "You're trying to take them away from me?" Thomas moved forward, protective, silent. Eleanor raised a hand, stopping him. "This isn't a negotiation," she said. "It's court-approved. You know why." Nathan's expression shifted. The facade cracked, only for a moment, revealing something harder underneath. Then he smiled. But it wasn't warmth. It was calculation. "You think you can just rewrite the past?" he asked, stepping aside. "Fine, come in. Let's talk like adults." The children hesitated on the porch. Eleanor turned to them, nodded, and they followed her inside. The house hadn't changed. Same furniture, same decor, meticulously arranged, pristine, as if trying to convince everyone that what happened here was perfectly ordinary. As the kids sat quietly on the couch, Eleanor noticed their eyes tracing the edges of the room, the shadows in the corners. They remembered. Children always did. "I want to talk to them," Nathan said. "Alone." "No," Eleanor replied. "We talk as a family, with Thomas here." Thomas stepped forward, his voice calm. "This isn't about you anymore, Nathan. It's about what's best for the kids. They're not pawns in your power games." Nathan chuckled. "Power games? That's rich, coming from a man who's playing house with another man's wife." "I'm not yours," Eleanor said, each word sharp, deliberate. "Not anymore." For a moment, the room went still. Then Nathan turned and walked into the kitchen. He came back with a glass of water and sat down, as if this were a casual visit. "You can't just walk in here with a piece of paper and undo everything," he said. "Do you have any idea what this will do to them? You're ripping their lives apart." Eleanor took a breath. "You already did that, Nathan, a long time ago." She didn't yell. She didn't need to. Every word she spoke carried the weight of years she spent doubting herself, unraveling in silence. She had spent sleepless nights convincing herself she was overreacting, imagining things. But the bruises weren't always on the skin. Some were on the spirit, the mind, where no one could see. Nathan leaned back. "You're rewriting history," he said again, quieter this time. "You want to be the victim now?" Eleanor didn't flinch. "I'm not a victim. I'm a mother, and I'm here to protect my children." The hours stretched on as the confrontation unfolded like a delicate war. each word measured, each sentence laced with memory. Nathan shifted tactics from anger to guilt to charm, like someone flipping through pages of a script. But Eleanor no longer believed the story he told. As dusk settled outside, the house grew darker. Thomas suggested they take the kids to a hotel for the night, give everyone time to process. Nathan refused. They live here, he said. This is their home. It's not a home if they're afraid in it, Eleanor replied. That hit him. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Panic, maybe, or recognition. But it vanished quickly. The children, sensing the shift, began to speak. Quietly at first. Bits of memories. Moments they had hidden started to surface. A slammed door, a cold stare, a punishment that didn't fit the mistake. Nathan's face hardened. You're poisoning them against me, he accused. They don't even know what they're saying. Eleanor turned to him. They know more than you think. It wasn't about rage. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, finally given space to breathe. That night, Thomas took the children to the hotel while Eleanor stayed back, waiting for law enforcement to serve the formal order. She didn't want Nathan alone with the children, not now. You're making a mistake, he said as she stood in the entryway. No, she replied. I'm correcting one. The police arrived quietly, respectfully. Nathan didn't resist. He was too confident, too sure of the lies he had told himself over the years. But Eleanor saw through them now. She had spent too long in the fog, convincing herself that she was overreacting, that everything was normal. Now she saw clearly. That night at the hotel, Eleanor held her children close. They asked questions, but not too many. They just needed to feel safe. We're going to be okay, she whispered, and for the first time in years she believed it. But the story didn't end with one confrontation. In the days that followed, Eleanor discovered that the past had deeper roots than she had imagined. Friends she thought were allies stayed silent. Documents were missing. And Nathan had been more careful than she realized. There were secrets in that house. Things hidden not just in memory, but in journals, hard drives, safety deposit boxes. The fight had only begun, and the cost of freedom would be more than legal fees or sleepless nights. It would mean unearthing the whole truth, even the parts she wasn't ready to face. The days that followed moved like a slow storm, steady, gray, and heavy with unspoken things. Eleanor sat in the lobby of the county courthouse, her fingers loosely wrapped around a cup of vending machine coffee. The children were at school, adjusting slowly, one cautious step at a time. Thomas had gone to work. She was alone, but not the way she used to be. Not like those nights she spent in the guest room, staring at the ceiling while the house around her held its breath. Now things were in motion. Legal things. Custody hearings, statements, background checks. Every corner of her life was being examined and documented. A few people offered support, soft encouragements, a smile from a neighbor, an old friend's hesitant text. But others were silent. Eleanor wasn't surprised. Some people had always liked Nathan. He was good at seeming kind. She was meeting with her lawyer, Miriam, a firm but patient woman who didn't flinch at tense silences or complex histories. Miriam spread out a series of papers across the table. Nathan's lawyer is requesting supervised visits, she said carefully. He's also filing a motion to challenge the emergency order. We'll need to provide more evidence to support the long-term custody arrangement. Eleanor nodded. I have my journal, she said. Emails, the school reports, too. Good, Miriam said. And we'll need statements from any witnesses, friends, teachers, even family members who've seen or suspected things. The judge won't take sides based on emotion. This has to be about patterns. Documented behavior. Not just your word against his. That part was hard. Eleanor didn't have a long list of people who had seen anything. That was the point. Nathan hadn't raised his voice in public, hadn't left marks you could photograph. But there were messages, words, shifts in tone, moments. She remembered one afternoon when their youngest, Lily, had spilled juice on the carpet. Nathan didn't yell. He didn't need to. He just stared at her. Quiet, cold, until Lily cried. Then he had looked at Eleanor and said, You see what happens when you let them act wild? Eleanor had cleaned it up silently, but she remembered thinking that the look he gave wasn't about juice. It was about control. That memory and 1,000 others like it now circled her mind as she prepared to face him again. Nathan wasn't idle either. He moved quickly as she knew he would. His charm didn't fade with time, it only adapted. Eleanor heard from a mutual friend that Nathan had been surprised by her actions, that he still loved her and was just worried about the children. He told people she was unstable, that Thomas had influenced her, that maybe Eleanor wasn't thinking clearly. She could feel the narrative shifting, twisting. But she was done being silent. Thomas was her constant. He didn't push, didn't crowd. When she needed space, he gave it. When she needed someone to listen, he did. And the kids were changing too. They were sleeping through the night now, smiling more. Lily had started drawing again, pictures of trees and lakes and stars. One afternoon, Eleanor found a picture folded in her daughter's backpack. It showed a small house with windows wide open, birds flying above it. Below, a figure stood holding hands with two smaller ones. Mom was written under the figure. It was simple, but it made Eleanor cry. The hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday. Nathan arrived in a navy suit, polished and prepared. His lawyer walked beside him, clipboard in hand. Eleanor sat on the bench outside the courtroom, her hands tucked in her lap. She was dressed plainly, gray sweater, black slacks, but she felt stronger than she had in years. Inside the courtroom, the judge reviewed the case. Nathan spoke first, presenting his version of events. Calm, reasonable, sympathetic. He said he loved his children, that he didn't understand what Eleanor was accusing him of, that he'd never harmed anyone. When Eleanor spoke, she didn't try to match his tone. She didn't cry or dramatize. She simply told the truth about the patterns, the isolation, the shifting moods, the way she had learned to guess his thoughts before he even spoke, just to keep the peace. She gave the judge her journals, described how Nathan would control conversations, limit her time with friends, criticize her in subtle ways that eroded her self-worth. She submitted a letter from Lily's teacher, who had once noticed a strange silence when the children were picked up from school. Miriam stood beside her the entire time, guiding her gently through the process. Then the judge asked if the children had expressed a preference. Eleanor hesitated. "They're still afraid to speak up," she said, "but they're more at peace now. They're sleeping better, talking more. I believe they're safer and healthier with me." The judge nodded slowly. "I'll be reviewing all documentation before issuing a decision." As they left the courtroom, Eleanor caught a glimpse of Nathan watching her. His expression was unreadable, not anger, not sadness, just a kind of calculation, as if he was already planning his next move. A few nights later, while Eleanor was folding laundry in the hotel room, Thomas came in holding a small black flash drive. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "I went to pick up the rest of the kids' things from the old house. Nathan's lawyer arranged it, and I found this behind the desk drawer." He plugged it into her laptop. It was filled with files. Some were financial, old transactions, strange withdrawals. Others were audio recordings, conversations. One in particular made Eleanor freeze. It was a recording of her from years ago, talking on the phone to her sister. The tone was light, but the content was revealing. She had been venting, talking about how Nathan would get upset over small things, how she felt like she couldn't be herself. He had recorded her, without her knowledge. There were several files like that, all carefully labeled, saved. Miriam confirmed they were admissible, proof of surveillance, of manipulation, of premeditation. Eleanor felt her breath catch. She wasn't imagining it. She hadn't been wrong all those years. He had tried to control her story, even then. The judge's decision came a week later. Eleanor sat in Miriam's office as the ruling was read aloud. Full temporary custody granted to Eleanor with supervised visitation for Nathan pending psychological review. The court acknowledged concerning behavioral patterns and the potential emotional impact on the children. It wasn't permanent yet, but it was a step. Eleanor thanked Miriam quietly and stepped out into the crisp air. She called Thomas and then the kids. They cheered on the phone. Lily asked if they could hang her drawings in their new place. We don't have a new place yet, Eleanor said. Then let's get one, Lily replied. And just like that, the clouds began to lift. But Eleanor knew it wasn't over. Nathan would fight back, he always did. There were still things she didn't understand, like the financial files on the flash drive, withdrawals from accounts she never knew about, payments to names she didn't recognize. Something bigger was underneath this. She had taken back her children. She had reclaimed her voice. Now she had to uncover what else Nathan had been hiding, and what kind of man he really was when no one was watching. The new apartment was smaller than Eleanor's old home, but it felt larger in all the ways that mattered. The children had picked out paint colors for their rooms. There were mismatched rugs, chipped mugs, and secondhand bookshelves. But laughter echoed off the walls now. Music played in the evenings. They danced barefoot in the living room, made pancakes on weekends, and hung Lily's drawings in every room. Eleanor's world was rebuilding itself, quietly, slowly, but with steady intention. Still, beneath the peace, something pulled at her. A quiet thread that hadn't been tied off yet. The flash drive Thomas found continued to haunt her. The financial records were strange. Multiple wire transfers, odd amounts, strange names. She brought them to Miriam, who suggested hiring a forensic accountant. It was expensive, but worthwhile. A week later, Eleanor sat across from a woman named Carla, who specialized in financial investigations. This looks like more than just personal banking, Carla said, flipping through the files. These transfers, some are international. See here? These are routed through shell accounts. Eleanor blinked. What does that mean? It could be many things, Carla said. Side businesses, hidden assets, even fraudulent behavior. Did he ever talk about investments or outside ventures? No, Eleanor said slowly. Nathan always said we were just making ends meet. He made me feel like I spent too much if I bought a new toaster. Carla looked at her kindly. Well, he's been hiding money. That much is clear. That revelation added a new layer to the story Eleanor thought she had already understood. Nathan hadn't just been controlling. He'd also been deceitful on a level that went far beyond emotional manipulation. And now she had proof. Nathan's demeanor changed when he realized the court had sided with Eleanor. He started sending messages, not threatening, not overt, but suggestive. We could still figure this out privately, he wrote. No need to keep dragging this through lawyers. Eleanor didn't respond. She forwarded everything to Miriam, who advised her to stay cautious. He's trying to shift the tone, Miriam said. If he can't win legally, he'll try to make you doubt yourself. It's his pattern. But Eleanor no longer walked in circles. She walked with purpose. She arranged another meeting with the judge to present the financial findings. The evidence showed a pattern of hidden income, potential tax evasion, and a history of calculated secrecy. It changed the tone of the case. Now it wasn't just about the children. It was about integrity, accountability, and the truth. Meanwhile, the children continued to adjust. Lily made a new friend at school. James, her oldest, joined a local robotics club. One evening, he asked Eleanor if he could talk. Was Dad always like that? He asked quietly. Eleanor paused. Like what? Different around people, like pretending. She nodded. He wanted to be in control. When people didn't notice, he could keep it going. But when they started to question it, he got scared. James looked down at his shoes. I used to think I did something wrong. Tears rose in Eleanor's throat, but she swallowed them. You didn't. None of this is your fault, ever. James nodded, then leaned against her shoulder. That was the moment she knew she'd done the right thing, even when it felt impossible. Nathan didn't show up for the next court date. His lawyer claimed a scheduling conflict, but Eleanor suspected otherwise. Something had shifted. He was pulling back. A few days later, she received a letter. It wasn't handwritten, it was typed. Cold, neutral. It said he was stepping away for a while, that he needed time to evaluate things. He made no admissions, no apologies, just a vague acknowledgement that the situation had become too public. Eleanor sat with the letter for a long time. Then she folded it up and placed it in a drawer, not out of fear, but because it no longer defined her. She didn't know if Nathan would resurface. People like him didn't vanish. They regrouped. But she also knew she wasn't the same person anymore. The next court order made the custody arrangement permanent. Full legal and physical custody to Eleanor. Visitation rights suspended until Nathan completed a court-ordered parenting evaluation and therapy. It was official now. She had won. But more than that, she had survived. Months passed. The apartment grew warmer. Photos went up on the walls. A dog was adopted, an energetic mutt the kids named Max. Eleanor returned to work part-time, helping with community events and writing grants for a local nonprofit. Thomas proposed on a quiet Sunday, kneeling in the kitchen with pancake batter on his sleeve. Eleanor said yes, not because she needed saving, but because she had saved herself and was finally ready to choose love freely. At their small wedding in the city park, the kids each read something they'd written. Lily read a poem about light coming through clouds. James talked about bravery, about learning what kindness really looked like. Later, under the string lights and laughter of new friends, Eleanor looked around and saw something rare. A life that had been rebuilt. Not perfectly, not without scars, but honestly, fully, truthfully. One evening, while cleaning out an old box, Eleanor found her first journal, the one she had started in secret, back when she wasn't even sure what was real anymore. The entries were raw, uncertain, filled with questions and self-blame. She flipped through them slowly, and when she closed the cover, she didn't feel sorrow. She felt pride, because every step she had taken, even the uncertain ones, had led her here. To freedom, to peace, to a home filled with open windows, drawings on the fridge, and a future no longer bound by silence. And in the quiet of the evening, she whispered to herself a promise she'd once been too afraid to make. I will never go back. And she never did.